Hi guys, how are we all doing? I hope everybody's okay. So here we are at the studio and we're going through a few little bits for you. We're going to talk about turbocharged cars today and how they work, what can go wrong, and even with tuning as well. Because, well, you know, if you tune a turbocharged car, there might be a fault there that you don't even know that there's stock. And then it gets highlighted when you tune the vehicle. And we'll show you how or why that can possibly be. We'll go through some of the sort of regular faults that you'll get with turbocharged cars as well. Underboost, overboost, those sorts of things, why things don't hit certain powers when you're asking them to. And 9 times out of 10, it will be down to some sort of mechanical problem that you may not even know that there's stock, because there's so much tolerance. In a stock vehicle, there's so much tolerance between what the car's asking for and what's given by the engine that you may not even know that there's an issue there, especially if you don't drive it very hard, or you've always had that issue there that's never really been highlighted. So we'll go through those as well. We've made a nice little diagram here, and we'll try and explain what's what and how's how and why's why's, and you're going to have to excuse my drawing because I tune cars, not an artist. So yeah, we'll give that a go. So basically, you know, the first step is to really sort of understand how a turbo works. So basically, cold air comes through, is pulled through into the cold side of the turbo. That's then pushed through into the intercooler, into the intake system, combusted in the engine, and then comes out as exhaust gases. Now, when the exhaust gases come out, this here, so the hot side and the cold side is connected by a very small spindle. And on each side, there's a turbine and there's an impeller wheel. So what happens is the exhaust gases turn this hot side, which then in turn spins the cold side up, which causes compression. Okay, so the more you compress the air down, the more you can get in there, the more oxygen there is in there within the same space that you have. You can compress it down so you can get more oxygen in there. More oxygen, more fuel, bigger bang, more power. It's pretty crude. There's not a lot to it, really. How this whole system gets controlled is quite a crude system, but you're going to have a lot of opportunities for things to not work. And when they don't work, then that's when you get issues. For example, the biggest one that you will find most of the time is a boost leak. And you say, well, you've got a boost leak, that's great. Okay, well, it's not going to be from here. It's definitely going to be from the cold side of the turbo all the way through to the intake. Once it's combusted, that's it. It's happened, so we're now coming out into the exhaust. So boost leaks can happen when you have very small splits in certain pipes. You can have holes in the intercooler. You can have Jubilee clips or clips and seals that weep slightly from this side. So if you can see a little bit of oil around your intercooler, if you can see oil, it means air's passing. If air's passing, you've got a boost leak. Off of here as well, you know, so also intake manifolds where the manifold actually joins to the block of the engine. Those little seals can go, and you can have boost leaks out of there. You can have boost leaks here. You can have underboost. If you have a boost leak, what does that actually mean? Well, what you're happening is the engine is asking for X amount of pressure. So let's say the engine is asking, or the ECU, let's say the ECU is asking for 2 bar of boost. That's quite high, but we'll just use that as an example. 2 bar of boost. So what will happen is the turbo will start spooling up, and you have what's called MAP sensors. Now, these are called mass air pressure sensors. Okay, and what they will do is they will measure how much pressure there is in the system so that it knows once it's hit 2 bar, it can start backing the turbo off. So the car's asking for 2 bar. Now, you've got a small leak here, for example. So if you're trying to build up pressure to 2 bar, but you've got a small leak and you only hit 1.5 bar, all right, that's underboost. Okay, so you'll probably get an underboost code. Now, at stock, when a car's completely stock with no tuning, no anything on it, you know, there's quite a large tolerance between what the ECU asks for, what the engine gives before the difference is too great for it to actually throw a code. So you might be losing, let's say, 100 millibar, which is nothing. So boost is measured in bar, and it's broken down into thousandths. So that's why you have a millibar. So 1,000 millibar is a whole bar of pressure. So let's say you're losing 100 millibar here. Well, that's probably not big enough for the ECU to go, well, I'm asking for 2 bar, I'm only getting 1.9 because the map sensor only reads 1.9. That's not that horrific. We won't throw a code, which, you know, is quite normal for cars. They can't throw a code for absolutely every single second that there's like 100 millibar of drop. There could be other factors which the ECU will consider as to why there's a drop. It might not have had enough time to get there. It might not. The air pressure might be slightly different outside. The oxygen content might be slightly different. And so there's all these factors. So 100 millibar for the ECU is going to go, yeah, that's not great. But let's say, for example, you start pushing through 2.5 bar. Well, let's say we're asking for 2.5 bar tuned. Well, as I say, that's quite a lot, but we'll use it as an example. So 2.5 bar tuned now means that you could potentially be losing 200 to 250 millibar here at this small boost leak. Now, 250 millibar is going to probably be big enough for the ECU to go, whoa, I want to hit 2.5 bar. My map sensor's only reading 2.3 bar, 2.25. Whoa, that's not good. Boom, there you have a light. Now, nothing's actually changed. You know, the leak is still exactly the same as what it was previously. You didn't have a fault code, you didn't have any running problems prior to it because the difference wasn't big enough. Now you tuned the car, there's a big enough difference for the ECU to go, whoa, 250 millibars enough here. I'm going to actually sort of say, yeah, that's not great. So that's one thing. A boost leak can cause that. Also, map sensors can go down. Now, on this diagram, I put 2 map sensors, and there's also a map sensor. Now, some slightly older turbos, we're not talking like huge amount of times back, they'll run a map sensor for load, and they'll only have 1 map sensor, mass air pressure sensor, to register and to read how much boost there is in the system. On newer cars, like, say, for example, Golf R's, for example, newer ones, they have 2 map sensors. So let's say one of these has gone down, okay? So one of these is reading slightly under what you should get. So there you're going to have an underboost fault because one of these is reading slightly less. So let's say there is 2 bar of pressure through the system, but the map sensor is only reading 1.8. Obviously, the ECU is going to go, whoa, this one's only got 1.8. Let's chuck on a light. Let's put it into limp. Let's protect everything. All right. So, as I say, if this was only reading let's say it was only reading 1.9, it was slightly faulty before you had it tuned, then you put more pressure in it. We know we're asking for more, yet it still only reads 1.9. Well, now we're asking for 2.5 bar. It's only reading 1.9. Now we've got 0.6 of a bar difference. So we've got 600 millibar difference between what the ECU is asking for, what the car's achieving, or what the map sensor says it's achieving. So obviously the ECU is then going to go, that ain't right, mate. That ain't right. We're going to stop that. And that's how that happens. So at lower sort of a tune level, like stop, for example, that won't show up because you're only 100 millibar. When you ask for more boost, and this only reads the same boost as it was, then obviously you're going to have a problem and it's going to show up. So that's another one that's really quite simple that you wouldn't necessarily know in stock. You wouldn't know. But there is a quick, easy way that a lot of tuners should be doing is, you measure the boost at atmospheric. So what does that mean? That means that when you have the car stationary, engine on or engine off, it doesn't really matter. With the ignition on, at least, so the ECU's awake, all the sensors are alive, everything else like that, you can plug into the OBD port and you can read what the sensors are reading. So normally, sea level in the UK, give or take, the odd millibar here or there is about 1,000 millibar. So if you plug that diagnostic machine in and you see 950 millibar, that map sensor isn't working properly. If you plug it in and you see 1,200 millibar, that map sensor is not working properly. Because you know, sea level, give or take, like it's going to take quite a few thousand foot to actually make a difference on the pressure. So you know, sea level, wherever you are in the UK, is going to be about 1,000 millibar. It's normally like 1,014, 1,015, something like that. So there's only like really, really minimal difference between certain parts of the UK and other parts of the UK. So you know it's going to be about 1,000 millibar. If you read below, map sensor's broken. If you read above, map sensor's broken. There is no other way because if you haven't got the engine on, Turbo's not spooling, nothing's running, nothing's happening. The only way that it measures mass air pressure, like as in pressure externally, or any pressure that's in the system, is going to be through the map sensor. Now, if the map sensor reads less or higher than what you know is the case in the UK, then there's your answer. The map sensor's gone. So going back to the boost leak, which I forgot, there's a quick, easy way to find any boost leak, pretty much. And what you do is you put smoke tester, you take the air filter off, you put a smoke tester in there, and what that does is that pressurizes the system and runs smoke through the whole intake system. Pretty simple. Where the smoke comes out, that's where you've got a boost leak. Because you can't physically see the air, and not many people can stand looking at an engine doing 100 mile an hour at 6,000 RPM whilst you're creating 2 bar of boost. That's an easy way, and that's really the only way to guarantee to diagnose boost leaks. So high pressure through there, any garage, any dealership, any tuner, anyone worth their salt should have a smoke machine, and they should be able to smoke your car and detect if there's boost leaks or not. That is a quick, easy way, because otherwise you go, people squeeze the pipes, and what are you squeezing the pipe for? There's no pressure in there. You won't see where there's a leak. So, good things to look for. If there's a weep of oil somewhere along the intake system, sure sign you've got a boost leak. But the only real way to find out exactly where it is to smoke test it, and where the smoke comes out, that is where your boost leak is, and then you obviously need to rectify it. So the map sensor, the only way to solve that map sensor, if you diagnose that it's that's the issue, replace it. There is no other real way of doing that. So you replace that, and then obviously that reads 1,000 millibar with a new one in at atmospheric pressure. Pretty sure that's okay. Also, to even know that there's an issue, tuners and garages and dealerships, they should be able to log data. So even if you're driving down the road, even if you're, just driving normally, you don't have to excessively smash the crap out of the throttle pedal and go hell for leather. They should be able to log data, and it's what's called specified and actual. Okay, so specified boost is what the ECU is asking for. So the ECU says, I want to achieve 2.5 bar. The actual is obviously what is actually being achieved, and that will be read by the map sensor. So if you're going down the road and you go 0 to 30, for example, it's not really maybe long enough. If you take it on a dual carriageway and you can manage to do 30 to 60, say, for example, that's going to be long enough in one gear, and you log the data, and all the specified comes up to saying, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. But this side, where it says actual, you're only getting 1.6, 1.7, 1.6, 1.5, 1.4. There's something wrong with the boost system. And you should be able to, anybody, really, it's very simple to log boost, should be able to look at those and go, yeah, that ain't right. Now we need to start looking at the system. Okay. So we've gone through boost leaks, we've gone through map sensors that can potentially be a problem. Other things that can be an issue. So a lot of people, when they say they have their car serviced, they do, and a lot of people will have the air filter changed. Now, why do we say the air filter is so important? Well, okay. This side of the turbo, the cold side, where you've got the impeller wheel, where you've got the compressor wheel, for example, that is literally going to be sucking air in, compressing it down, and pushing it through this system. So you think, it's all metal. Yes, it is, yeah. But you imagine tiny bits of grit and dirt that do get pulled through, especially when air filters aren't cleaned, they can start damaging the edges of the compressor wheel. So the compressor wheels are, if you've ever seen one, they're sort of curved edges like you would see on an aeroplane engine, for example, when you look at them. So what happens is tiny bits of those on the frat edge get chipped away. Now, the problem you have with that, when it's spinning, it's trying to compress the air. If it hasn't got the right surface and the right angle, it's not going to compress the air properly. If it doesn't compress the air properly, you're not going to get enough boost in the system. If you're not going to get enough boost in the system, the map sensor is going to go, not got enough boost in the system from what we're asking for, we'll give you an underboost code. And so this is why it's so important to maintain air filters, not just for the fact of being able to, get nice, good, clean, fresh air, but also to prolong the life of the turbo. That is what's really, really important. You don't want to damage those compressor wheels at all. Otherwise, you'll start not creating the right amount of boost. And again, at stock, as I say, if the difference is only 100 millibar, then you ask for more. That difference is greater, and therefore the ECU goes, whoa, and that's why you'll have a code thrown up. So it won't be down to the software, it's just that the software is asking for a little bit more than what you were already getting, which is how we tune vehicles. And so now the problem that wasn't there, well, it was, but you didn't know about it. The problem that was there previously, that was unknown, has now been highlighted because you're asking for more. And so the difference between what you're asking for and what's achieved is that much greater, and therefore you get a fault code. What else can affect it? Well, the hot side of the turbo can also affect it because they are joined, the cold side and the hot side are joined by this spindle here. So the same, if you have an issue with the propeller wheel at the back, the hot side of the turbo, if you have an issue with that, that is not going to spin this side quick enough, therefore you are not going to create enough boost through this part. So the map sensor goes, again, we haven't got enough boost. On that side, now, how the turbo is controlled. Now, I've got a slightly bigger picture here, which hopefully you can see. You've got hot and cold side. This side, the hot side, so the hot side is run by the exhaust gases coming out of the engine. So the more exhaust gases that come out, the higher the pressure is, the faster that turbine spins. So the faster it spins up. Now that's got to be controlled somehow, or it will just keep spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning until it absolutely obliterates itself. So there has to be some form of control. And that control is done by, 9 times out of 10, by a wastegate. And there are lots of types of different wastegate as well, and how they're controlled. So basically, hot air comes into, all the exhaust gases come into the turbo, spins the turbine wheel, and then comes past, right? So to stop this completely spinning, you have a wastegate that opens and closes. So that opens and closes to control the flow of exhaust gases over the turbine. So once it keeps spinning, and let's say, for example, it hits 50,000 RPM, or we hit the desired boost this side, so we hit 2.5 bar, what will happen is that wastegate will start to open. So it allows exhaust gases to not go over the turbine and keep spinning it faster and faster and faster. It goes past it and straight out through the exhaust. So the wastegate controls how much exhaust gases are allowed to flow over the turbine to create boost. So, really, really easy one. If that actuator, so for example, if that wastegate doesn't move, it's got stuck, for example, and it doesn't open, what's going to happen is that turbine is going to keep spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning, spinning and create too much boost in the system, and then you'll get an overboost code, which is more than what we're being asked for. So for example, if we're asking for 2 bar of boost, and in this system is made 2.5 bar of boost, well, that's too much. That's more than what's being asked for. And if that wastegate doesn't open, you will always create too much boost. Conversely, if that wastegate never closes, so when you start accelerating, the wastegate closes to allow all the exhaust gases to go over the turbine to start building the pressure. When it hits that pressure, it starts opening. So conversely, if that never closes, you'll never get enough boost because there's not enough exhaust gases going over the turbine to spin it up to make boost this side, on the cold side. So again, you'll have underboost. So if the wastegate doesn't shut, you will have an underboost code. So it could be the wastegate itself inside the turbo, which causes overboost and underboost. There are a couple of different wastegates. You can have external wastegates, internal wastegates, and you have variable vane wastegates. So an external wastegate is basically what it says. It's a big old thing on the end of here that you might probably see in a lot of Japanese vehicles. A lot of vehicles that have big aftermarket turbos. There will be this dome on top just after the turbo. All that does is that basically opens and closes and allows exhaust gases to bypass. So it stops building up the pressure here. So it stops spinning the turbine. Internal wastegate is what I'm talking about here, that opens and closes to allow the exhaust gases past. Variable vane wastegates, now they are like tiny little teardrops that run all the way around this part of the turbo. And then they are connected by a rod that's circle, and there's a lever which normally pushes close, and they'll open and close, open and close. So it's just lots of little ones which are apparently more efficient, more of a pain, more like it. They're more efficient, and so a lot of manufacturers, turbo manufacturers, open and close those. Those are more susceptible to sort of carbon buildup. So if you have carbon buildup, it will block the variable vanes. A bag group 19 PD140, for example, or the CR140s, they have variable vane wastegates, and they are prone for overboost, absolutely prone for overboost, because the wastegate never opens. If it doesn't open, you create too much boost than you're asking for, and they do that at stock as well. But obviously that's highlighted when you tune a vehicle. So internal wastegate, external wastegate, and variable vane wastegate. So they can have an effect of how much boost is created this side, which then causes you problems. So let's say, for example, all the wastegate, or whatever wastegate you've got, is working fine. Well, that's got to be controlled somehow, and that's where the ECU comes in as well. And they're controlled by what's called an actuator. So that can be controlled by pressure, it can be controlled by vacuum, or it can be electronically controlled. So those three options. If it's controlled by pressure, the more boost pressure that's built up this side pushes against, say, a spring-loaded valve, and then what happens is that spring-loaded valve is moving that wastegate open to allow exhaust gases pass. That's the most crude way of doing it, is when you hit sort of the boost pressure that you set, pushes the spring-loaded actuator, which then opens the wastegate. Now, a lot of modern vehicles, they'll have an electronic actuator in here. So what will happen is, once the map sensor's read 2 bar, the ECU goes, whoa, well, I'll run a bit of vacuum to this actuator to start opening the wastegate up. And conversely, with pressure, it will do the same, but it will come off of this side. So the pressure builds up and it goes, right, I've hit 2 bar, so it will start allowing some pressure to come through, which is why you see the dome on the top, and that pushes a rod which opens the wastegate. So it's still controlled by the actuator. So if you have a small split in the pipe from here to here, for example, if it's run by pressure, not enough pressure is going to get there, so it's not going to open the wastegate properly, and you're going to have overboost. Conversely, if it's run by vacuum and you have a very small vacuum leak in one of the very small pipes, there's not going to be enough vacuum there, so it's never going to push the wastegate open, so you're going to have overboost. And it's exactly the same. If there's too much pressure or it's open all the time, it will stay open. And conversely with pressure as well. Now you can have electronic wastegate control, and that means there's no pressure to it or from it. It literally is like a motor inside, and that will just wind down and wind out, wind down and wind out. That has like a plug that goes through it, winds down and winds out, and that then pushes a rod which opens and closes the wastegate. Obviously, if there's a mechanical fault or malfunction with any of these actuators, including the mechanical one, because they'll have like a little spindle on it, and what happens is the threads can wear out and then it gets stuck and then it doesn't open it, or it keeps the wastegate open. If there's a problem there, you're always going to have an issue. Always going to have an issue. Now, you've also got what's called a boost solenoid, which then controls the actuator. So, for example, this controls how much vacuum the actuator gets or how much boost pressure the actuator gets. Now, when it's in electrical wastegate, there won't be a boost solenoid there because it's all controlled by the motor that opens and closes the wastegate. When you have vacuum or pressure, there'll always be a boost solenoid, and that allows, there'll be like a little thing inside there, a little plunger that moves open and closes, that allows X amount of pressure or vacuum that you need to open and close the wastegate to keep control. So if there's anything wrong with that, you're going to have underboost or overboost, and the same with the boost solenoid, you're going to have underboost or overboost. Now, as I keep saying, all of these issues, you may not see their stock. You may not even know their issues until you start asking for more. And it's the specified against actual. So specified at stock maybe 2 bar, actual maybe 1.9, not enough to have a problem. Tuned, specified might be 2.5 bar, actual might be 1.9 to 2.3. That's 200 to 500 millibar gap between what's being asked for and what's being achieved is enough to then highlight a problem. So as you can see, I mean, a turbocharged engine is quite a crude way of gaining more horsepower very quickly from manufacturers. It's quite efficient, to be honest. That's why a lot of the bigger manufacturers they used to have V8s, V10s, V12s, they're all coming down to like V6 turbos, V6 twin turbos, because it's quite a crude way of doing it. The problem that you have is there's always going to be lots more involved to control that and to make sure things are okay. And that is more or less, excuse the drawing again, what can happen. So underboost and overboost is never going to be tune related. It's always going to be that the engine cannot achieve what the ECU is asking for. Now I say can never be down to the map. Depends on where you go, it depends on who you use, it depends on the quality of the tuning that they do. For us, we know what boost pressures we should be setting at, we know how we should be doing it, we know how the systems are controlled, we know what we're doing with the boost system, so we can adjust, and we make everything to suit that particular vehicle, a particular make and model. We know what engine's in it, we know what turbo's in it, and so we can look after things. Obviously, if you're paying £100 for a tune, not necessarily going to know what the crack is. So you pay cheap, pay twice. That's the rule of thumb. Because all this knowledge, all this understanding doesn't come overnight. You have to learn it, you have to understand it, you have to know what you're doing. So tuning vehicles is quite a lot more in depth than just plugging it in and going for it. So if you have a guy that comes round and he's a slave to somebody, so that means that he sends his file off and they come back, know where that file is coming from. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because we have a lot of dealers out there that are slave to us. So they read the customer's car, send it to us. We then we tune the vehicle from data logs that are provided, from other bits, and from our knowledge and from our database and what we know, and then we send it back to them. So the customer knows that they're getting max tune software, which is great, because then you can know that it's safe, it's reliable. We understand the processes of everything. If they are slave and you don't know where it's coming from, try and find out, because at the end of the day, it's better to know what you're getting rather than just saying, someone can do it for £100. Well, there's an awful lot that can go wrong here, an awful lot. And you need to understand an awful lot about how this whole system works. So turbocharged cars are fantastic. They are the best tuned because you can increase the boost and you can get far better horsepower gains. But you need to understand the whole entire system as to how and why overboost, underboost, and correct boost works. So yeah, hope that video has helped you sort of understand what happens, how it happens, why it happens, what goes on. We'll do some more videos about other things that happen, like misfires and stuff like that, and how that affects things. And it's not just always spark plugs, it can be lots of other things as well. So yeah, click like if you like the video. That really helps our channel. That really helps sort of the algorithms go, oh yeah, this guy's all right. And I hope this has given you some insight into how turbocharged cars work. If you want to become a Max Tune dealer, please click the link below. It will just be there, and then you'll get sent to a page. You fill in your information, and we will be able to send you one of our dealer brochures straight away. That will happen automatically, and then you can start your journey to adding tuning to your existing business, or you can start getting into the tuning business with us. Guys, take care. I hope everything's okay, and we'll see you soon. All right, guys.